Hey y'all, welcome back to the show. My name is Joe Alvarez and you're watching Cinematicians. Alright, so today, I just came back from watching Joker Folie de... Folie à Deux. You French speakers can correct me on that if you so desire. Uh, but of course, I had to get caught up on the original Joker, 2019, starring Joaquin Phoenix, directed by Todd Phillips. Um, and I did that all last night. Anyway, I'm here to share my thoughts on both those movies. Now, the first Joker, I'm going to say, was pretty fantastic. Um, Now, I'm not saying that the film promoted anything good, but the thing is, it rises above a lot of films in that it didn't promote anything at all. It kind of did what William Shakespeare often did, which was put characters into a scenario, and then just kind of see where it goes. It's kind of how we understand the muse, so to speak. It's almost like a scientific experiment in that way, and that's what the Joker was. It took this loser of a character, and how he understands and is treated by the world, and his overall reaction to that, given the opportunities he was given. Um, and it deals in a lot of relativism, and that is strictly being well, I was told that the world around me is dark, and I'm here to bring joy and laughter to the world. I have a condition where I laugh when I'm stressed and depressed. Um, and you know what? The world is cruel, and I've struck back. That's what the first Joker is all about, and and you know what? There's more to it, and you know what? The world, to me, because I keep laughing at everything, even the darkest things. And it's not like I just have a dark sense of humor, it's just I keep laughing. And you know what? That must mean I just find everything funny. If I find everything funny, everything must be funny. Therefore, I don't live in a tragic, dramatic world where I have problems. I'm okay. And, the world is just a comedy that I'm just laughing my way through. Now, in some ways, that's kind of true. If you go watch Andrew Klavan's show, you can find out more on the Daily Wire. I'm not. By the way, I'm not supported by them. I'm just kind of a fan of the Daily Wire, being a conservative Christian myself. But this isn't about politics. This is about movies. Now, it's obviously a very serious drama, and one that, you know, is a mid-budget film. For one thing, it was only $55 million, and it was a crush at the box office in 2019. And then it was also very visually and just artistically well done. It was also just relatively ambiguous, and it didn't push any agenda or message. It just kind of stated these are the characters, this is the setting, this is what happens. And we can kind of do with that what we will. It's not, pushing good morals, but it's not pushing anything at all, which is a hell of a lot better than pushing bad morals. And, it obviously makes us question our alliance with the protagonist, because the protagonist is normally seen as a kind of hero, but throughout that film, Joker, brilliantly played by Joaquin Phoenix, is showing himself out to be not a hero, not even an anti-hero, but strictly a villain. The world is against him, and he's against the world. So, to the sequel. What the hell were they doing? It really disappoints me. For one thing, for those of you who don't know or weren't really paying attention to the marketing on Joker 2. I'm just gonna say 2. Um, it's a musical. We, why? Why does it need to be a musical? It doesn't need to be a musical. You made a brilliant drama, kind of with an origin story for a villain, and it was so well done. You don't need to go and ruin that. Yeah, no, it was a drama. It could have just been a standalone film. People really undervalue standalone films nowadays. We see the MCU, we see Disney, we see even Warner Bros. Doing all these sequels and reboots, and they're hardly ever high quality sequels or reboots, franchises even. Um, Everyone wants to be the MCU. You can't always be the MCU. Just make a good film and move on. They did not do that with Joker, and I got the feeling that it was a it was a studio mandated sequel, and you know there were some parts of it that were actually pretty good, but a ton of it was completely unnecessary. Again, some of the musical numbers, half the time you can't tell if it's in reality or if it's just in the their heads. But anyway, the second film it takes place after the events of the first, not long after the events of the first film. It doesn't specify when exactly, but we not only are reintroduced to Joker, but we also are introduced to Harley Quinn. Um, and it it goes through this whole trial about the goings on, and whether or not the goings on of the first film, and whether or not Joker was crazy, was he schizophrenic, or was he insane, or is he fully 100% culpable of all the murders that he committed. Um, and it was just chaotic. Now, and I understand, the first one was really artistically done, and it was kind of getting in as close as you can into the head of an insane murderer, and I'm sure there are other films that do a much better job at it, but it was brilliantly done, given the time period, the zeitgeist, all of that good stuff. Um, then you kind of ruin it with a bad sequel, and maybe we all should have expected this, but it's infuriating. Um, it was way too long, and you guys may already know how I hate long movies. I Okay, I don't hate long movies so long as they're worth sitting through. The Godfather is one of my exceptions. Um, but for example, let's say older movies that were um, even made in the 90s. They were 90 minutes long, or even way back in the 30s. And I'm not like an oldie movie watcher. I've seen a few recently, and I might get to that on another video. But, if you keep it to 90 minutes, it's, a decent film, and then people can move along with their day and enjoy a good film. And it limits, like, the amount of time that you can spend embellishing on characters. So you got to be really creative, not just in the story writing, but how you got to be really creative with how you are creative in the story writing. Anyway, when you have a really long film, a lot can get lost, especially among the audiences, especially when you're trying to deal with, one, an artistic film, and two, a film that delves into criminally insane mindsets, fictional, but still criminally insane. Uh, and if if a character is insane, then it's already difficult to try and make sense of it. And that's one thing that movies are supposed to do really well, is to try and make sense of a situation, either objectively or subjectively, to according to the criminally insane. Um, and anyway, I decided I'd react to the critical drinker's criticism of it, because he tends to be able to articulate these things way better than I can. Um, Now, I agree with him on a lot of things, of course, which is why I don't always watch his videos, but I'm curious to see what he has to say. All right.
Wow, I guess time really does make fools of us all. The first Joker movie was one of those rare moments of cinematic serendipity where everything that should have been wrong somehow came together to become absolutely right. A low-budget origin story about a Batman villain that nobody asked for, directed by a guy best known for making comedies that proved the law of diminishing returns, and shadowed by media accusations of promoting violence, misogyny, and generalized buffoonery. It was a film that seemingly had everything going against it, but somehow turned out way better than it had any right to be. In a sea of oversaturated CGI sludge, the Joker dared to tell a small, intimate, complex story of a man pushed into madness and despair by a society that was blindly indifferent to him. A movie with a wonderfully unreliable narrator, driven by a superb performance by Joaquin Phoenix, and an ending that left the audience with more questions than answers. It was a perfect one-and-done movie that told its story and told it well. No need to do anything more with a character like that, because it would just cheapen the experience. So, like the rest of you, I was a bit perplexed when I found out that Joker was getting a sequel, and even more concerned when it was announced as a musical co-starring Lady Gaga. But just like everyone else, I tried to suppress my doubts and ignore that nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach that this movie was fundamentally a bad idea. Surely to goodness Todd Phillips knows what he's doing and wouldn't just shout out some lame cash grab sequel that undermines the integrity of the original, right?
Wrong.
Then I sat down and watched it. And if all 2.5 hours of Joker Folie Deux proves anything at all, it's that sometimes you really ought to listen to your instincts. Yeah, there's definitely good elements in there. You can see that talented people were working on this movie, and the ending is definitely going to get people talking. But overall, Joker 2 felt like a dull, bloated, and ultimately unnecessary movie that failed to answer the question that's dogged it since the beginning. Why does this film even exist? Now, I know it's just come out and I don't want to spoil it for people, so I'm going to keep my plot summary short and sweet, unlike this fucking movie. So with that in mind, let's go. The story picks up shortly after the events of the first film, where Arthur Fleck has been arrested and locked up in Arkham Asylum while he awaits trial for all the murders that he committed. His lawyer wants to plead insanity, while the prosecutor Harvey Dent's pushing for the death penalty. Bad times indeed. But while he's at Arkham, he meets a young woman named Lee Quinn and soon starts a bit of a romance with her. But is it really Arthur that she's into, or is Joker personality? And what's her true motivation for being there? Well, you'll have to wait and find out. Anyway, the case goes to trial, and Arthur's soon confronted by the reality of what he did in the first film by going over most of the key events again. But how responsible was he for what happened? Was the Joker really a split personality that took over him, or just part of him all along? And what will Harley Quinn think of him when she finds out the truth? Joker 2 is kind of a frustrating movie to watch because in a lot of ways I can see how hard many of the people involved are trying to make it work. Joaquin Phoenix delivers the same intense, compelling performance as the first movie, arguably a bit too similar, but we'll get into that one in a minute. The point is though, he's definitely given the role his all and some of his scenes are genuinely compelling. Lady Gaga, much to my surprise, also turns in a good performance as a crazy superfan enamored by the flamboyant persona of the Joker rather than the flesh and blood man behind it. And if you're inclined to look for themes in this film, it's an interesting insight into the intoxicating danger of celebrity and the vast gulf between myth and reality. The two actors play well off each other, and the kind of twisted romance they cultivate seems pretty appropriate for a movie like this, and the film even has you questioning which of their interactions even happened for real. It doesn't do it as effectively as the first movie, but it's something at least. The thing is, I'm pretty sure that the comic version of Quinn was more like the Joker's plaything rather than a manipulative femme fatale stringing him along, but again, it probably fits with what we know about this version of Joker. And I guess that brings me along to my criticisms, the biggest of which is the deconstruction of Arthur himself. The ending of the first movie saw him fully embrace his Joker persona, shedding the last remnants of his old, weak, victimized personality and embracing the madness of the world world around him. It was a logical endpoint for a man who had been desperately trying to swim against the tide for most of the film, and it was kind of cathartic to see him finally let go. It was a final fuck you to the world that had kicked him to the ground again and again. A world reduced to fire and chaos. All of that good work seems to have been undone here, because for most of the film, he's reverted to the same weak, timid Arthur that he was at the start of the first movie. And I can't shake the feeling that there's something almost mean-spirited in that kind of deconstruction, as if they're taking a swipe at the audience themselves for liking someone they weren't supposed to. I don't know, man, it just feels like character regression instead of development for me. Then there's the musical numbers that pepper the narrative. I can't believe I'm saying this because normally I fucking hate musicals, but I actually kind of enjoyed the sheer spectacle and performances while I was watching them.
Ha! Gay!
And Lady Gaga clearly doesn't have any trouble belting out her numbers. But the more I think about it, the more I see them as shiny objects trying to distract from what's actually a pretty stodgy, bloated, and uninspiring drama. The courtroom scenes are basically just a dry recap of the first film, telling us things that we mostly already know, and destroying that awesome sense of ambiguity and unreality that made it such a fascinating story to pick apart. Now we know exactly what did and didn't happen, and shit, man, it feels like such a waste. And most disappointingly of all, I actually find myself kind of bored and checked out at times, something that absolutely never happened with the original movie. As I said before, the question hanging over Joker 2 was, is this a story that really needed to be told, or is it just a bunch of talented people doing their best to elevate a studio-mandated sequel into something that it isn't? Well, now that I've seen it, I'm afraid I know the answer, and it's not a good one. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Alright, so he said it better, and I have to agree with him. It was an unnecessary sequel. What else can I say about this? He also hit on the length issue. The other problem with when you make it too long is it's so easy to get bored. Not only to get not just get lost and everything, but when you get bored, you are more likely to get lost. Yeah, it was just kind of a bad and messy sequel, I'm sorry to say. But of course, you know, it's a sequel, so it happens a lot, way too often. So those are my thoughts on Joker, Folie, Adieu. Please let me know what you think in the comments. It is past midnight as I'm recording this, so excuse me for my time-lapse brain. Please subscribe, share, comment, do all the things to support this channel, and I will get back to you shortly. All right. God bless. Bye.